All right. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We'll go ahead and get started. This is the Sales Tax Subcommittee of the House Ways and Means Committee. We have two items on our agenda. These are the first hearing on both of these bills, so these will be a hearing only. I'm told we have three bills. I just didn't turn over the back of the sheet. The first bill we're going to go with is House Bill 1034, 1034. Representative Wiedauer, we're working off on our machines here. LC 500292. Is that what you have?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Please tell us about your measure.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee members. So House Bill 1034 extends the exemption of sales tax for non-reoccurring major sporting events. Some of you would remember back in 2016, this was passed successfully hosting the 2016 football playoff semifinal, then the 2018 college football playoff national championship, which was painful for those of us that were there, 2019 Super Bowl, and then unfortunately, and I'm a big basketball guy, I was very disappointed to have the 2020 Final Four canceled due to COVID, but this bill allows us to kind of be at the bargaining or at the table to be considered for these types of events. So this bill would extend that sunset out. It sunsets this year currently. It would extend it out to 2031, which seems like it's far away, but they're already we're in the running for the Final Four in 2029. So this would extend it 2 years past that. This bill would also add to the list, as many of you know, North America was selected for the FIFA World Cup in 2026. And we are one of 16 cities that are in the conversation for hosting various events that surround that. We can get into several of those. And depending on what we would land, obviously it would affect how much money it might bring to the state. This has just been it's been a successful process to get these events here and be a robust boost to the budget here for us. So that's the bulk of it. I know there's some people here that might need to speak if we got questions, but I will field any questions at this point, Mr. Chairman.
Let me ask the subcommittee if there are questions. All right, I see two lights on over there. One of them may be, are you on mic number one?
That one's lit up. I don't think anybody's
on. I see number 1 and 10 lit up.
I'm 10.
Those,
and that's
you're
1.
10. That's 1. So you're 10.
Yes, sir.
All right, I'll turn 1 off. Just kidding. I guess I won't turn 1 off. There he goes. So are there any questions? I have just one. If you happen to have this information, somebody else may have it. Obviously, we're adding the FIFA World Cup,
yes, sir,
to it, and then extending the date on lines 35, 30, 34, 35, and 36. What type of year for someone that's not an international soccer fan, what type of year would the World Cup? I understand it extends over like more than a month. So when would that be?
Yeah, well, it's the 2026 is what we're looking at. And
right.
it is, give me 1 second and let me get to, actually, you can actually get into, let's see here. Apologize, Mr. Chairman.
No, that's fine. In the interest of time, just take a look at that. I just wanted to actually spread that over, for folks' knowledge about, the exciting, the opportunity for the excitement. So we can, if there are no further questions, we can go to testimony, and then maybe one of the folks can fill us in on the date.
Sure. There's a host of rounds. I mean, you have an opening, you got group matches, then a round of 32, round of 16, then the quarterfinal, semifinal, third place game, and the final.
No, I know it,
so
it extends over a month. I just didn't know if it was in July, August, May, June. So we'll get to that.
Okay.
Any further questions for the gentleman? I see no further questions. And do we have people signed up to speak? No one signed up to speak.
You want to answer that question?
We'll, without objection, we'll let you testify as part of the presentation. All right. So now you what press the button over there. So I got a number for you.
What number is it?
Just tell me what number it is too. Okay. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Chairman Martin. Thank you, Representative Wiedauer. My name is Nick Fernandez with the Metro Atlanta Chamber. We are here alongside, as many of y'all know, we house the Atlanta Sports Council within the Metro Atlanta Chamber. And their job, led by Dan Corso, is to go out and recruit these major sporting events. And as Representative Wiedauer mentioned, we are looking at future events already that extend out to 2031. First one being potentially 2025 National Championship, 2028 Super Bowl, and then a 2029 Final Four to recoup hopefully the losses in the event we had. But to your question, Chairman Martin, the games extend over a 35-day period. And they'll be occurring amongst all the host cities, ending with one national or one championship as well as a third place game. And then the other potential is we are currently also in the bidding process for the International Broadcast Center, which would house all of the media for the event here in Atlanta. And that would actually be a longer term investment. We're looking at probably 6 months of investment, including preparation, building that up, and housing them for 6 months here in Atlanta as they get shipped out around the country, as well as Canada and Mexico for events.
Thank you very much. Any questions, Mr. Davis? Questions? Any questions? I see none. Thank you very much. Chairman Blackman.
I was just going to ask if it, I know we've had some discussions and looked at this a little bit. Can you kind of explain? I know there is no fiscal impact if these don't take place. None of these take place, but could you maybe run through what the fiscal impact looks like as far as the return on something like this?
You're still 10, right?
All right. Yes, sir. I haven't moved. Mr. Chairman, that it obviously is wide ranging. It could, as far as the revenue lost on, or that would be exempted in the sales tax, it could range if you literally hosted every single round, which is not going to occur. It could range up until I think it was 12.4 million, but the return on that is in the hundreds. Hundreds of millions.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. So is it fair to say, I'll ask you a leading question here. It's fair to say, if not but for this, they might not choose to put any activities or certainly as many activities in Georgia. But with this incentive, they would, and it is your belief, and you have information to back that up, that the revenue that we would lose from the sales tax on the tickets would be more than made up many times over with the other direct economic, and we oftentimes hear indirect economic benefit, but when I say, I guess it's indirect if it's not in the stadium, but I'm talking about one step removed: direct hotel, food services, transportation, tickets coming in and out. Is your representation? If we lose more, if we have 6 games instead of 1, we might forego 6 times as much sales tax, but we'll get 6 times as much additional revenue from that.
Yeah, and I would actually offer this this analogy. I'm in real estate. The real estate market has been incredibly hot for probably the better part of 2 years at this point. And when you're putting in 20 offers on a house, you're doing anything in that contract to kind of stand out to be the one selected, right? Whether that's shortening my due diligence period or that's shortening the closing time frame, not just, hey, we're going to spend more money on the house, but it might be more appealing to select my contract over another. This is that kind of negotiating. It doesn't mean that we necessarily would or would not get something. It just makes our contract look a little nicer, a little more attractive to be selected. And yes, I look at it as an investment. We're not even risking the dollars we would be missing out on to have a 20, 30 fold return on that investment.
Are there any further questions for the gentleman? Again, that we're just spreading this over the committee today. Again, to highlight the gentleman's primary changes, or to add the FIFA World Cup as a valid portion to this bill, and to extend the date to 2031. There are no further questions. I do have number 6. Yes, sir.
This is a hearing only at this point,
It is,
right?
yes, sir.
I mean, I just two quick points just on behalf of Augusta. I'm disappointed that non-recurring is part of the definition when someone commits to the state year after year, every April. Hopefully we'll be out by then. But no, I'd certainly understand the attraction. I guess you kind of touched on it at the very end, is this actually costs the state nothing unless we're successful in bringing these. So I like what you said about the fact it's not money that we have to front up ahead of time and hope we get one. This particular discount, if you will, costs nothing until we're successful. And I support that. Thank you.
Thank you.
If, Richard Miller, if you come up to the microphone while you're doing that, without objection, the chair will allow. Without objection, the chair would allow you to make a further commercial for that golf tournament you hosted in April,
Yes.
if you'd like.
It's gonna be easy.
We certainly hope everybody is there early on Monday morning, April 4th, when the practice rounds begin. And we'll be in the middle of day 40.
A place like, not like any other, right? Representative Bentley.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your, for bringing this bill. I'm just curious to know how exactly will this legislation impact rural Georgia?
I'll let you know, but I'll say this, any funds that we raise for this state go into the general fund and give us a greater opportunity to support rural Georgia, like we have, I think, done a pretty good job with, especially after Hurricane Michael. The funds like these that we generate, this is exactly the type of thing we need to have an influx of cash to be able to do that.
And if I might help, Representative Whittar, is my understanding, if we get these events, again, we could get a game, we could get 4 or 5 or 6 games potentially, and it will be in Atlanta because that's the stadium that fits. But as I understand, what's fee, you get it out, this mask makes me unable to talk. Is my understanding, one of the things that the FIFA folks are doing is doing these fan fests out and around. They're not just going to be in Atlanta.
It's a great
So
point.
we would have
Yeah.
the opportunity to put those on in various places around the state of Georgia. I mean, it could be down to the fairgrounds. I mean, it's basically FIFA is trying to, make that other kind of football, but more important around the world than that is in America, because we think of American football that we have. So I think for Nick, you can comment on that if you take a second, but I believe that would be a big pull for the rest of Georgia to get people outside the metro area excited about the overall tournament itself. Teams from 32 teams, more than that, 48 teams from around the world would come. So that would be one of the big draws for outstate Georgia.
Okay, well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you. I just wanted to reference rural Georgia because oftentimes people in this outside the metro Atlanta feel though they are left out in a lot of the conversations about big dollar businesses coming to the state. And so I just wanted that statement brought out so people that are watching and listening will know how this is truly going to impact all of Georgia and especially rural Georgia also.
Yes,
They
ma'am.
may not be actually housing these actual games, but the revenue that's coming to the state will in the long term benefit rural Georgia. And
Yes,
that's the
ma'am.
point that I wanted to
And
be
rural
brought
Georgians
out.
will have an opportunity to participate, and you're a great advocate for your area in rural Georgia. Number 2.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I apologize for being late to the committee meeting, and this information has probably already been shared. My question really is, what is the anticipated, let's say, ticket revenue compared to just as a multiplier compared to a Super Bowl type event? Is it 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, 10 times? What is it?
I can tell you that the potential impact of having the FIFA World Cup is upwards of 400 million. Compared to the Super Bowl, Super Bowl generated right at 100 million. So I mean, it could be upwards of 2 or 3 times, or 4 times as much.
That's the number I was looking for.
Yes, I'll yield.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The other point too is kind of what we started out with was 35 days. It allows for a longer longevity for a lot of the ancillary costs. So your hotel stays, your restaurants, all your lodging, all of your merchandising, all of that has a much longer footprint. I believe our footprint for Super Bowl was about 10 days, kind of end to end. For FIFA World Cup, we're looking at about 35 days for group matches. And if we're lucky, and if, we feel like we're in a good position to potentially host a semifinal, we would have that beginning stage of group matches and then also the semifinal at the end. So we're talking a longer duration of investment in visitors here to Atlanta and the whole state of Georgia. And Representative Bentley, when our team and Dan pitched this and looked at this as a host site, he very much saw it as a state of Georgia. And two, having 35 days to spend similar to an Olympics, he very much sees this. And they have approached it as we can do events around the state. It may be in between games, or if there's days that there's not a game, maybe there's a fan fest in South Georgia, maybe there's a fan fest in North Georgia, to make this not just a city of Atlanta, but a state of Georgia event and something everybody around the state will remember.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you. I see no further questions. Representative Widar, thank you for bringing us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Just to be clear, a lot has been talked about hotels and things. This bill addresses the sales tax off of the admissions.
Just the
It's
ticket.
Just the
That's
admissions.
correct.
Everybody that's coming in to visit and travel and would pay the hotel motel tax, all of the
All
things
that.
that go in. So this is truly an opportunity for a rising tide to lift all of it. Thank you very much. We'll take this again as
Thank you,
first hearing on the item, and if would encourage the subcommittee if they have any questions or suggestions for the representative to get those to them straight away. Thank you very much. Thank you, Nick. We'll move on in the agenda this afternoon. House Bill 1187. There you are.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. Let me make sure are you on number 2?
Yes,
Yes, sir.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is LC 432195, House Bill 1187. Basically, this is a high technology data center. So sunsets in 28. And what we're asking is for it to sunset in 2038. It brings 20 high paying quality jobs to the area for high technology data centers. And the bill is important policy because it helps Georgia fulfill our vision to be a technological capital of the South. We compete regionally and nationally for new investment in our state. What's that? Okay. We want to ensure Georgia is on par with 26 other states in the U.S. and every other state in the Southeast in its tax related to data centers. This committee will be considering 2 data center sales tax exemption policies, one that provides a sales tax incentive for a single tenant data center, which supports the data needs of a specific company. When the single tenant data center policy was adopted in 2000, this was the only type of data center that existed. But as technology has changed, data centers have changed and data centers are increasingly larger scale. High investment facilities, meaning hundreds of companies, government agencies, every business vertical hosts their equipment and data in collocation environments. House Bill 1187 does the following while ensuring the protection of fiscal responsibility resources. Continues the winning data center tax policy to allow for large long-term investment, removing the sales tax on the equipment in the data center ecosystem and client gear that is placed in that data center. Most importantly, it sets a high minimum investment threshold of $250 million to ensure that Georgia truly reaps the economic benefit on that high level of data center investment in our state. Also establishing a tiered investment threshold to attract rural data centers with a minimum investment threshold of $100 million. It protects taxpayers by requiring up to 20 million surety bond to be posted to and requires the Department of Revenue to make annual assessments of the development investment of the data center company to ensure they are meeting their investment targets to continue to qualify for the tax incentives. This is an important clawback provision should a collocation data center fail to make accurate annual reports to the Department of Revenue or fail to achieve the required threshold. The bill also prohibits a company that has received the sales tax abatement on their gear from simultaneously receiving an abatement from the personal property tax at the local government level, an important protection for local government revenues. Economic impact. That is precisely why 26 other states have implemented or modernized their data center tax laws to attract the data center companies like Switch, QTS, and recently announced T5 campus near Fort Gordon. More important, though, is that already these companies have said this tax policy allows them to invest as much as $4 billion and create more than $250 million in tax revenue in our state. Because they have so many clients, they're able to attract other companies who have their gear within their data center to establish call centers, customer service centers, tech operation centers, and more. One company, Switch, has 700 employees, but over 9,000 people have badged access to their data center in Las Vegas, and a full third of those have Nevada driver's licenses because their jobs exist because of the gear running in a Switch data center. The remainder of the employees of Switch 800 client companies who fly into work on that gear, stay in hotels, eat in local restaurants, and bring that broad economic benefit. I want to point out the current economic impact between June 20 and July of 21. These are statistics that were given. Georgia's data center generated direct and indirectly $5.3 billion in state economic output. 22,940 Georgia jobs were supported. $1.5 billion in Georgia employee pay and benefits, the average salary being $128,000, and $190 million in Georgia state and local tax revenue, not including taxes and fees paid on electricity. They're simply asking to extend the sunset from 28 to 39. And I know Representative Bentley and I would love to have one of these in the middle Georgia, South Georgia area.
Representative.
I've got a question. Where did you get these figures from?
I'll show them to you right here. I've got them from some of the,
Did they
The
come from the
providers.
Carl Vinson Institute, or where did you get them from?
I got them from some of the members in this room. I'll be glad for them to talk.
Okay, and one other question. When you say, how many employees does a data center employ?
Well, they're saying 20 of the high paying jobs, 20
Tw-
employees.
20 employees.
That's the minimum.
Okay, and you've got 20 employees, and those 20 employees pay 1.5 billion.
Ms. Penny, I'm just telling you what was presented to me. $1.5 billion economic impact.
Are you talking about the job supported that pay that much?
On the job supported, that's 22,940 Georgians. And on the
And
one and a
that's
half,
all Georgians, they support that many Georgians, all the data processing.
that's this information that I've gotten from the impact of data centers from Mangum Economics, December 2021.
If I could, if the lady doesn't object, I don't mean to interrupt,
No.
but if I could you get that copied and if chairman doesn't, it's on, okay, it's on our sheet.
It's on the
Okay,
screen.
That's fine. I was just
And
gonna-
I was just wondering.
gonna
you
ask,
know.
yeah, for the paper copy of it as well. If we can look at, it's hard to look at both screens at the same time, but yeah, thanks for sharing that. We can look at that. Representative or Chair Lady, can we see if he has some backup there that can help source that
Okay,
data
I
for
just
you?
wanted to get the data straight.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. We'll do that if
I'll be glad to get it to you.
if we get through our questions here. Number two,
I'll defer to Chairman Blackman.
and there we go. We are deferred.
Okay, well, I just was noticing here, in the same vein as Vice Chair Bentley mentioned previously, we do have this broken down by, I guess, what it ends up being population of our counties. Is that correct, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
We actually have different thresholds of investment based on the population of the county
Less than 30,000.
within
Yeah,
the
yeah,
current
yeah.
law.
In the current law, it says for high technology data centers located in a county in the state having a population greater than
Well,
50,000,
Greater than 50.
according to the
between 30 and
U.S.
50
decennial
below 30.
census of 2010, or any future such census, 250 million in aggregate expenditures. Then there's one for 30 to 50,000 under 2 in line 23, and then on line 30 for data centers located in counties with population less than 30,000, $100 million in aggregate expenditures.
Thank you.
Okay, well, let me go to Dr. Newton. I'll come right back to you, Chairman Williamson. Dr. Newton.
That, I guess it follows up on that. One is the, I guess the last threshold is reached at 50,000 and above. So all metro counties would be included in that pretty much. It's not a lot. You got to get
Those population less than 30,000 is the last one. 3.
No, he's
50 and
going
up
up.
is the
Going up,
last.
okay.
Yeah, there's no discrimination between a 200,000 and up or something like that to try to encourage to go into the rural county areas that may be 55,000. That's one thing. I was just kind of curious, like the $100 million minimum expenditure and the 20 jobs. Do we know how much tax being asked to abate to get those minimum of 20 jobs, or is 20 just a starting point and they really might have 200 jobs in $100 million investment? Or is that kind of the ratio? Is you do $100 million?
Yeah, is our Graham.
Well,
Yeah, whoever you think, sir.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead, but let's stick to the question if we can, because you have another question, then we're going to get to you to testify. So answer the question or hold off, and then we'll let you testify if your testimony will answer the question.
Absolutely, Mr. Chairman. Graham Thompson on behalf of one of the large co-location data centers that are that's located in our state, Switch. To your question, Representative Newton, yes, to obtain a certificate of exemption, a company would go to the Department of Revenue, depending on which county you're in. So we have a tiered investment threshold, and you would lay out your investment plan over a 10-year window. So you've got 7 years and a 10-year investment window to hit either $100 million in a rural county, $150 million based on population in the second tier, and then 250 for the most populous counties in the state. So you lay out that investment plan to the Department of Revenue. You make annual updates to that investment plan. If you're falling behind and doesn't look like you're going to hit it, you hit that clawback provision that Representative Williams spoke to. So there are annual reports that do go to the Department of Revenue to make sure you're on track. And then you do have to create the 20 new quality jobs. Quality jobs means at or above the prevailing wage in the community. I can speak to Switch. Co-location data centers, these are not manufacturing jobs. You won't see hundreds and hundreds of jobs. We have 46 full-time
All right,
employees.
I'm gonna slow you down there for just a second. We're gonna get to your testimony. I'm gonna
Yep,
get to the
absolutely. Sorry, I was just trying
we're
to-
gonna give you the opportunity to do that, but
I think,
let me go to a couple of the questions and did that I get your answer the way you were looking for it?
Not exactly. I guess I'm just trying to find out. Doesn't sound like we're going to make the money in jobs necessarily, but the money does come from other areas. Obviously, we're not, if we do this, they're exempt from the sales tax when they buy that 100 million in equipment or more. I just was curious at some point, maybe we can get to the fact of where the state recoups its investment, not the indirect, but the direct taxes. But I'll defer to
If you don't mind,
Co-Chair,
in order to
thanks.
Keep us moving along. We'll get questions, then we'll give them an opportunity to testify and then.
Quite simply, mine was in the same vein. I think that everybody's excited about the progress that's been made and just curious about the performance, where the money's been invested and what kind of yield to Georgia's given in additional jobs and tax revenue. So that's something we can talk about offline. I'd just like to see do our homework on what kind of return for the Georgia taxpayer we've got. And I'm sure it's a good one, but I'd like to see the numbers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple things to talk with the author of the bill about. Isn't it true that one reason we want data centers here in Georgia, and one reason why we want to continue to attract this type of industry is they play into an overall technology ecosystem for our state, and that by having facilities that allow for this type of co-location of the data, that it helps attract other investment and other economic opportunities for our state for employers to come in. Isn't that true?
Oh, yes.
Further questions to the gentleman before we move forward in testimony? I want everybody to have their questions answered. I'm just going to give them the opportunity to say their piece as well, to testify, and then we'll ask questions based on that. Mr. Rusty Paul. Mayor, former member of the body.
Yeah,
You know, it's late in the afternoon.
yeah,
No,
I'll
I'm
be,
just
I'll
kidding.
be as brief as
Mayor,
Chairman
you take
Houseman will let
as
me
long
be.
as you need.
No, it won't take me long. Let me see if I can put this into a context that will help everybody understand how this kind of functions. We all know what the impact of the interstate highway system was on our economy in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s. The road moves everything, and then all the economic activity occurs around the exits. Well, in the data world, the data centers are the exits. It's where all the economic activity occurs around that area. So when you stop at the Waffle House on I-75 or down on 16, you know, you create economic activity. Well, this is economic activity of a higher level that occurs. We just had a company, Deluxe, which is a big financial services business, move into Sandy Springs, creating several hundred jobs. And they're an innovation center. So they're bringing people from around the country to work in our community on these new technological innovations that we all want to see happen. Without the data centers, without these backbones, none of this occurs. And these companies sign long-term contracts. Why would he need to extend the deadline today? They sign these contracts for up to 10 years in advance, and they need to know what the playing field in Georgia is going to look like. And so that's why this is an important piece of legislation at this time. It helps communities that are trying to create these high-tech jobs. Without that interstate system and without those exits, these jobs are not created. So I hope that analogy helps us understand what the importance of this piece of legislation and the overall infrastructure that it creates, because data is the 21st century infrastructure, similar to the highway systems that we built in the 20th century. Does that make sense? I hope.
Mayor Paul,
Yeah.
just not questioning but he was trying to catch notes here of you are here today representing
QTS.
Okay.
Yep.
Just
Yep.
for that.
Sorry about that.
No, that's fine. We
Yep.
just, I introduced.
I have a
you
tendency
as a
just to-
mayor, and we
Yeah.
didn't know if you were here representing the city. of Sandy
I have a
Springs
tendency
or-
to just jump in.
Well, that's
So,
fine.
okay.
We have questions for the gentleman. Yes.
Sure.
We're talking about an extension on the sunset here.
Right.
And so the level of certainty, I guess, is what you're speaking to
That's true.
with regards to, it being here and available.
What these companies do is they sign these long-term contracts. And as you heard, there are about 26 countries across 26 states across the country where they have options. And they want the certainty to know well in advance that these incentives are going to exist for the length of their contract. And that's why it's important that we go ahead and do this now.
Hey,
They to extend this contract.
Well, they sign contracts for up to 10 years.
Okay, well, maybe I'm not subtracting wrong. I'm just a country girl, but this looks like a lot longer than.
Well, but the current sunset expires in 2028.
Yeah. and
So we're inside that 10-year window.
Yeah.
So
6 years and 10.
I know. I went to a rural school too. Math is still my challenge, but I can at least handle that much. But it is important. They want long-term stability, I guess. And that's what they're getting in the other states. So we're trying to stay competitive.
Thanks, gentlemen. Here's what I'd like to ask.
Okay.
This is me asking. And again, we're hearing only on this here's what makes me go, huh, in the
Mhm.
thing. I don't have a doubt that when you put your handle around this, and that it, it's a good economic impact. But I think what the chair lady is saying, it's tough when you you spitball the numbers, if you will. You know, if you talk 20 jobs at 120,000 a year, that they pay about $140,000 in income tax. You know, about how much do you pay in personal property tax if they're opening that up in Fulton County? Because it takes, you know, if you do $10 million worth of purchases and don't pay $700,000 in sales tax, you got to be there 5 years before you get it. So help us make that case on a more, you don't have to do it on a microeconomic level, but a little bit more of a macro level, because it all fits together. And again, I know there's some indirect stuff that goes with it, but we don't need that, you know, somebody's cutting the grass of the guy that goes in there once a week. I mean, of course it flows down in a but if you could help us do that, I think that would help us get to the numbers as opposed to just seeing them on a sheet. We believe your numbers.
Yeah.
It's just, you know, she's been here a little while longer than me, not much, but she's very good at getting sort of to the bottom of things. And I think if you could do that, it would help us all.
Look, if it just created 20 jobs, I wouldn't vote for it either.
Yeah, but so help us understand that.
All right. So what happens is in a data center, particularly these co-located data centers, is people come in, they build it. They cost about $400 million to build and equip. So you get the construction jobs that come from that, up to 1,500 or so construction jobs in building one of these systems. But that's not really the long-term investment that we're building. It's what happens is these companies that rent space in these data centers now are sending their employees in to work there, and they're establishing offices in the nearby area because there's so much interaction. There's not a company in America today that doesn't depend on data. If you don't have good, solid data, you can't operate in today's business environment. So they want to be there and manage that data, and so they're establishing those jobs that are around there. But the real impact is the one that I just kind of outlined, where a company comes into this infrastructure at one of the exits or near one of the exits, or because one of the exits is in the area, and creates several hundred jobs because of this resource that we have in the state of Georgia. That's where the data center is the drop of the stone in the pond. And from that ripple comes more and more jobs that are tied to it. So, but it's like, can you imagine the state of Georgia today if we had opted out of the interstate system, what our economy would look like? Well, this is the 21st century infrastructure that these jobs are being created from. And that's why we need this kind of infrastructure to be able to create these high-tech jobs, whether it's in Augusta, whether it's in downtown Atlanta, or it's in my community, or the other places where these jobs are being built because this infrastructure, because the exit exists. They're building around that exit to create the economic activity. And it's not, you know, I love Waffle House, but these are not Waffle House related jobs. These are very high paying, high tech jobs that build that infrastructure that's important to the long-term economic health of the state. Does that help?
We believe you if you could just put that on I think just provide us, you know, a little bit more in depth.
I have my own study.
So,
I'll be happy to send you, and it will source some of the data. I'll send it to the chairman, and then we can disperse it to everybody else.
This guy right here.
Okay, that'll be great.
All right, we're going to go on to the next.
All right,
person.
thank you very
We'll
much.
come back if we have questions. Mr. Thompson. As you come to the seat, it's the same thing with you. If you could focus on, but not the microeconomics of it, but you know, a little bit of a macro thing. We know there's more than 20 people. We know the thing. One of the questions that was asked at the table up here was, if you're talking about a $400 million data center, do you have a rule of thumb about how much of that is sticks and bricks and parking lot, and how much of it is equipment? So
Great. No, great question. Thank you again, Mr. Chairman. Graham Thompson on behalf of Switch. So going back before 2018, CBRE, which tracks data center leasing, named Georgia as a secondary market. We really weren't in the competitive game. As Representative Williams mentioned, 26 states have 0% sales tax as it relates to client equipment in a co-location data center. CBRE's report in September of 2020 named Georgia the third hottest market in data center leasing for the first half of 2021. So the policy is absolutely working. And why is that something that we want to encourage? Switch is here largely because of the great policy that was championed in 2018. Thank you, Representative Kelly, for that. Just since 2018, Switch has 1.5 billion in the ground in Douglas County. And so to your question, Chairman Martin, about 700 million of that is the facility itself. That's the data ecosystem, cooler, cooling equipment. Data centers like to be 68 degrees, all the things that go to support the data center environment. And then the rest of it is the technology spend by our clients. And that's really a big boom for the local community. When people buy computer equipment and house it at Switch or at one of the qualified high technology data centers, they're going to burn through equipment, computer servers about every 36 months. This is equipment that's running 24/7, 365, has 100% uptime. So each time they make these tremendous $100 million investments in data center gear, they're paying personal property local ad valorem tax on where that equipment is located. In addition to that, obviously construction materials, we're paying on that with a $650 million new building and all the work that goes on there, payroll taxes. And certainly I want to call this out. I spoke to 100% uptime. Data centers are the largest users of electricity and energy. So we pay state and local sales tax on all energy used there. So certainly agree with you, Mr. Chairman. Happy to work out some of those numbers for you. In addition to the jobs number, I just wanted to call out Switch. There are 46 full-time employees there, but this is critical infrastructure. We can't have 1 second of downtime. So the type of people we employ are veterans and first responders, because those people are used to dealing with critical infrastructure. So that's certainly a commitment our company makes, and I'm sure others in the industry do as well. But really appreciate the opportunity today, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Representative Williams, for bringing the bill. Look forward to continuing the conversation.
Questions for the gentleman? Chairman Holton, you have one? Questions? Any questions? If not, again, we are in the posture of hearing this for the first time before the committee. I'll go back to you, Chairman. Did you have anything you'd like to complete? No. Have nothing further from the author of the bill at this time. So I would ask the same on this measure. We have House Bill 1187 LC 432195. We'll look for that information and get it out of the Ways and Means Office to the subcommittee members. If you have any specific questions that come up after this meeting, please get them to Brian, and he'll get them to the author of the bill and to the appropriate people to get information so that we can take action. I do think Chair House makes a point about the date, being, quite a jump, if you will, from 28 to 38. There may be something you might want to work with the lady to, sharpen up a pencil there and find something in between. Compromise is a good thing. We heard that several times from the well of the House today. Compromise and communication and getting along. I encourage you to do that. With that, we'll move on and conclude the hearing on this. I would like, we have one more item that I'm going to present from the chair just because it's this brief. We're not going to take action on this, but it's somewhat related. House Bill 1223, if members would pull that up, and of course I'll allow testimony. I know I'm being a bit loose with the presenting from the chair. As members will, well, there you go. So we are now recording, so be careful what you say, Chairman Mosman. If you remember last year with some going back and forth on what was referred to previously as the high-tech tax exemption, and I think has been referred to today as sort of a single site data center, the Senate placed a sunset date of June 30th, 2023 on that. That exemption is given based on calendar year purchasing. Companies have to purchase at least $15 million worth of qualifying equipment in a calendar year. So it doesn't make a great deal of sense because the legislation doesn't speak anywhere to proration of that if it's done at 6 months. So what House Bill 1223 does is without getting into should it be extended longer than that, it just makes it a full calendar year. We're going to December 31st, 2023, so that you'd have that for that exemption. And that's literally all that bill does. So I wanted to bring that for consideration, and I'll take questions. Representative Williams. Did you not have one? Yes, ma'am.
Wasn't that part of a big bill and it just sort of a mistake? And we had a lot of other bills and that the other things considered in the bill.
Well, yes, ma'am. That was a part of a big bill, and then far be it from me, so especially given that we're being recorded to say the Senate would ever make a mistake. But
No.
I think perhaps in the late hour, they did not realize that it was because it was going so much together. It's fair to say they didn't realize that they had, if you will, split the baby, that they had cut a calendar year right in two and made it an unworkable
I don't know if
situation.
this is the year and only, but at the proper time, I'd like to pass.
Let me ask if the chairman's okay with it. This is our first reading. Normally, I think Ways and Means has a rule of a two hearing meeting. If the chair would allow, and he is sitting right there, as we call him the big chair in Ways and Means. If I could say, if we would waive the rules to allow action on this bill in its first reading, with unanimous consent, if somebody objects, and that would be your time, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, well, certainly the subcommittee can see what we're doing here is not an extensive debatable issue, so to speak, either for it or you're not. So I would concur with Chair Lady Houston and I think the second over here, if it's the will of the subcommittee to move something like this forward, I think it sooner rather than later. I don't see any issue with it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If the lady would just hold her motions for a second or withdraw,
Okay.
just since I kind of stepped a little bit out of the normal rules of order to present from the chair, let me be wide open and ask, is there anybody that wishes to speak to this? I thought we'd be hearing it today and didn't realize the subcommittee wouldn't take action. So if anybody wishes to speak to this, I want to give them full and adequate opportunity to do that. Anybody wish to speak to the item? Again, we're just moving the date back 6 months so that it can actually function under the calendar year terminology that's already in the state law. Hearing none, then I will close the hearing on the matter and go back to Shirley Houston for a motion.
I make a motion to pass.
I have a motion and a second. Do pass. This is House Bill 1223 LC 432239. Is there discussion on the motion? Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Any
Aye.
opposed? No. Do we have people online that we're good? No members online? Did you hear an aye, or did we get an aye from you, Chairman Gaines?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Okay, there you go. Thank you. That does pass and moves on to full committee. That concludes the items we have on the subcommittee agenda this afternoon. I want to thank everybody in the office.
Terry
Thank
wanted to
the
talk
subcommittee
about what's
members.
going on. Terry
Without
knows what
objection,
we're
we'll stand
talking about.
adjourned. I see no objection. We are adjourned.
You got a question.